On today's podcast, I'm excited for you to meet my dear friend and executive coach, Ron Kertzner. I met Ron back in 2017 when I moved to Boulder, Colorado. In this show, we'll be exploring the neuroscience of self-leadership, looking at the power of positive psychology, poetry, and the potential that exists in every one of us, especially the opportunity inside of leadership. Ron, welcome to the Discover WellBeing podcast, and thank you so much for spending time with me and my listeners.
Allison, thank you. It's a joy and a privilege to be with you.
Will you help everyone get a grounding of who you are and the work that you do in the world?
Yeah, the work that I do in the world, I serve as an executive coach, leadership development trainer, and a facilitator. And having worked in the field for quite a while, in the last number of years, I began to realize that although you may have a great experience in a class or a great facilitated experience in a group or even a great coaching engagement, oftentimes the insights and the awarenesses didn't last. And so I became fascinated with the idea of how do you make lasting and sustainable change, that once you finish a program or a process there, you've got the tools and perspectives that you have significantly shifted your sense of being. And that's my passion. That's what I do. And who I am, I just love life. And I so enjoy working with people who want to be the predominant creative force in their lives.
So you were a leadership coach well before your time, it sounds like.
I've been at it a while.
Meaning mainstream is catching on. I remember when, what is mindfulness? Then they would show the Google search results when it became popular. And conscious leadership and transformative leadership, and these words that are really catalytic for ripple effects, personal and professional ripple effects in this world. So we have different areas that we're going to cover today, but is there just a natural launching place where you want to start?
Yeah, first, I just want to tell you that we first introduced mindfulness and meditation at General Electric in the late 1990s. And the consciousness was such that we had to close the blinds in the room when we did that, because if any of the executives came walking through and saw people practicing meditation and mindfulness, they would have been fired and we would have been fired. So we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think the place to start would be recognizing the kind of pressures and the stresses that people are under these days that make it difficult to access that deeper place in themselves that wants to live consciously and live creatively to do that. And just recognizing the current state for what it is. Is it okay to start there?
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Along my pathway of really trying to understand neuroleadership, I was really blessed about 5 years ago to come across the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? Author of Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Becoming Supernatural. And I had the equal gift of becoming certified in his work there. So you really had to learn and embody the work, which by itself is a game changer. But one of the key things that I came away from all of that is the recognition that most of us are completely plugged into our environment. And that means that there's a neurological network that's connected to everything in our external life, all people, all places, all things. And then we start thinking equal to those things that are out there, which means we actually can't change and we can't tap into our own inherent creativity. And so the external world defines who we are. And I see so many bright leaders, so many people who have a lot of passion get trapped by the pressures of the external world and not knowing how to get through that.
They're heavy. These systems at play, these invisible systems at play are heavy.
All around us. They are just all around us. And if we're not conscious, They will affect the quality of how we think and the quality of how we act and how we feel. And that's our state of being. And so a lot of times what happens is people have these wonderful ideas and possibilities there, but they forget them in the day to day, or they lose connection with them. And then they think it's just a pipe dream, or they give up, or they become cynical there. And my passion is to help awaken that sense of no, there's something greater in here. I want to learn how to tap into that. I want to learn how to express that. I want to learn how to stay as consistent as I can with the energy of that deeper place that we all know exists within each of us.
You and I share so many things in common. So I'm getting you on that because we'll share with the audience is that we're both HeartMath certified, right? So it's this heart science of which Joe Dispenza leverages the heart science as much as the brain science. So could we explore the heart-brain connection?
Yes, that's really great. And by the way, it was through my connection with Dr. Joe that I was introduced into HeartMath. So that was just a perfect way of connecting in. But basically, what happens when we're under stress and we're taking in everything in our environment and not connecting to ourselves, we are in a state of incoherence there. And from the HeartMath work, they can actually measure your heart rate variability there, which indicates is there a sense of coherence, which is harmony, being, peace. So it's not just an idea, you can actually measure that doing that. Most people, most of the time, are in a dysregulated state when they're reacting to their environment. This just stress level is so high. So I find it's been my personal practice ever since I was introduced to HeartMath that the number one place I go to when I'm feeling stress out of balance is into something that we call heart focused breathing. And when you do heart focused breathing, you are bringing back that sense of heart rate variability that's in a coherent state. Doing that translate into just a sense of well-being, a sense of calm and ease that you feel in your body doing that. And we all know that there are more nerves going from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. So when you start in that heart coherent, you're then influencing the parts of the brain that actually enhance our self-regulation. And when we are self-regulated, we can tap into our power to create. So it all flows together. And the good news about the HeartMath work is we can use the body's physiology to support us in really being the creator of our lives doing that. So it's not just an idea or a concept that sounds good, but it's actually we can use our body to actually embody that and live that and feel that, most importantly.
What comes to mind is the technology to support one's learning because the studies show that when you've accumulated so many points, you're banking all of this coherent energy that it's like a supplement. It works its way through the body and it's giving you this capacity to not just have it in the moment when you're doing it and have up to a 12-hour period. So then you're able to sleep better, but you're able to perform better. And that's generally the bottom line when it comes to leadership performance, right? What is it going to do for my team? But when you can start to regulate and then teach how to co-regulate, I think that's
Right.
the secret sauce.
I would completely agree with you. And many of my coaching clients have the heart rate monitor. And I'm noticing, and they're noticing a change in their baseline of reactivity over time. So the things that used to get them into a dysregulated, discoherent state as having less of a pull on them. And when they do get triggered, they know how to come back quicker. It's not like you're not going to have moments when you're under stress or you feel dysregulated or you're out of balance. Impossible given who we are as human beings and what's going on in our environment. And we're just shortening and shortening the time period that it takes to recover and reconnect.
I agree. We're with others within this corporate culture that has a system that has this high velocity of pressure. And when they can see that they are in control of their physiology, and you mentioned this earlier, resilience, is the greatest result. So how are you taking Dr. Joe Dispenza's work with the HeartMath work to show the efficacy?
Yep. So with many of my clients and their teams, I will teach them the Dr. Joe course that I'm certified in is change your mind, create new results. So that teaches about the brain, how the brain works with a little bit of understanding and practice. You can basically biologically make the change to a quality of state of being that really is your ideal self or your ideal future self. Who do you want to live into there? Part of that integrates HeartMath, and then I go deeper with HeartMath. And so what I'll do with the leaders and their teams, especially when they're in a challenging moment, and I just had this happen to a guy who made a presentation before the CEO of a rather large company.
Yeah.
What he did was he went into a heart coherent state, did that, and then through Dr. Joe's work that we've worked together on, he did mental rehearsal of exactly how he wanted to show up in that meeting with his boss. So he practiced ahead of time. Right before the meeting, got into that heart coherent state, remembered the energy, and he said it was a fabulous meeting. So that's the kind of things I want to help people learn how to do. Because if you think about it, everybody knows how to go to the gym, right? And work out, and go to the gym and do their muscles, do the physical exercises. Very few of us, myself included, know how to really work the internal muscles of our brain and our heart so that we're really bringing our best to whatever it is that we're doing. And that's where results happen. I think the challenge is we get so used to and so familiar with the just putting up with things there and making our peace with things there without recognizing that there's so much more within us that we're capable of that's really our birthright as human beings to be able to access and to give ourselves permission to begin that exploration process, to ask ourselves the question, what else is there? How can I bring the greatest version of myself to what I'm doing? What's my vision for myself, my family, my coworkers, the way I participate in the organization? And begin to develop those internal muscles. Doesn't happen overnight. Some people it does, but most of us it doesn't. And you just keep building and building. And then that is what becomes our practice during the day. That's our work there. We do the internal work and then the external work flows out of that.
Like yoga, on the mat, off the mat. Yes. Or cushion meditation. Same.
Same thing.
But I think what's so beautiful is that, then again, as the yoga and meditation instructor, that the practicing on the mat sometimes is what they focus on, but it's actually how it plays out that they aren't paying attention to, but others are. You look brighter, or how come you don't yell anymore? You've got patience. You never had patience before. And I think these are the qualities and the characteristics that make a great leader and a great individual and a great partner. I know you have been married to your beloved for a long time.
30 years. And I was just going to say, you're making improvements when your spouse tells you, I notice a difference. I see that you're changed. You're not reacting the ways that you used to doing that. And that's actually very reassuring when that happens.
Then again, the positive ripple, right?
Exactly. And I want to say, Alison, one other thing about this. We used to have this separation, certainly when I started in this work, the separation between there's my professional life and then I've got my personal life there. When there was like this boundary between the two. And I had an old friend and mentor say to me that your foreign policy is only as good as your domestic policy. The way I translate that in is your work out here is as only good as the work in here and with those closest around you there. And what I love about all the work on neuroleadership and HeartMath is that it's about integrating the two. That if I really want to have an impact on my world, it starts with the change and developing the inner muscles in here.
Excellent. Could you share positive psychology as additional skill sets that they can build? Can you speak into that?
Yeah, I actually want to say two things. about that. The first is that positive psychology is often given a misnomer, which is stay positive all the time, no matter what's happening, to do that, and deny what you're feeling. And it's not that at all to do that. There's a beautiful article that I read recently called Toxic Positive Psychology, where it's overused and you deny what you experience. The trick of positive psychology is not that we don't have feelings and not don't we have so-called negative feelings. It's our ability to respond when that arises in us. And how do we choose to be with, let them be as they are, and then how do we respond to do that? And that's the gift that I think positive psychology has to offer us. And the lens that I come in through that is the work of Shirzad Chamine in positive intelligence, where he uses neuroscience and positive psychology and performance psychology to help us be able to respond in a way that best serves us. And his essence in his work is basically there are three skills that you can develop to maintain a creative, positive state of being. The first one is we just have to become really familiar with and get to notice what he would call our saboteurs, which are the survival part of our brain and the habits that we've created in response to life circumstances that helped us survive. And they're not bad, but they're also not the only thing. And the trouble is we've relied on them for so long, that's all we think there is there. And so the key is just to begin to notice when you're in a saboteur energy. And how do you notice that? Anytime you're in a negative emotion like anger, frustration, fear, reaction to anything, that's telling you, oop, my survival brain's getting triggered. It's not a bad thing. It's just telling you that. And like a hand on a hot stove, you don't want to keep it there for too long. You want to be able to move it. Part of it is, a lot of that is just accepting that is the case right now. So it's not like you shouldn't be feeling that way. It just is. But then then the next part is being able to shift your energy and your brain over to that creative aspect of ourselves. How do we do that? In the book Positive Intelligence, there are two ways to get us over there. One is to really exercise what we call the PQ brain, which is right here, the frontal lobe part of the brain, where you do exercises, short little exercises to get you right back into your body there. Because when you become in your body, you can't hang on to all that energy that you're reacting to. And so in the positive intelligence world, there are just a number of short little things you can do to bring yourself back into your body, or what would we call in HeartMath a coherent state, doing that, right? And you use all the physical senses to do that. You can use touch, sound, sight, and of course your breathing there. And my favorite way is heart-focused breathing, which we talked about earlier, all designed to do that. The third way is to really access that part of your brain, what he calls the sage, or your creative circuitry, which is really the neocortex and the limbic systems flowing, which is that creative part of the brain. When we're not worried about survival and stress, it's really what it means to be fully human when we can connect to that part of the brain. One of the most profound ways that I found of shifting that energy is to simply ask the question that no matter what is happening, what's the potential gift and opportunity that's present here? Right? It's not about forcing the issue. It's not about denying anything. It's about saying, okay, this is what is. What might be the gift and opportunity for this to happen? So I'll give you an example, right?
Please.
Working with a very senior executive at Google, and we're working, and there's some challenges that she's facing, some really tough feedback she's getting, not sure she wants to be in this place of where she's working there. Not feeling great, right? There. And so you're with that. That's okay. Now, in working together over time, what's the potential gift and opportunity that's here? So there are two things that just came up in a beautiful way. One is, okay, let me distill some feedback that's in here that's going to help me grow to the next level. And most importantly, this is my cue to really get in touch with what I care about, who I want to be, and how do I lead from my sense of purpose. Had that not happened, those questions may not have been asked. So that's how to help people make that shift. And then within the SAGE part of the brain, there are just some beautiful qualities and practices around empathy, discovery, around really connecting to your deepest values, around acting with clarity, that all helped us shift us into that state. And the good news is that we're actually hardwired to do that.
As with this leader, we're constantly getting feedback that brings us down. And oftentimes it's because it's not aligned with our values. Like intrinsically, we know what we want, what we stand for. And when you're not able to speak that truth and do that kind of work, and you're being squashed, and it's alarming.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that, because that's so many of my coaching, executive coaching conversations. And when I'm working with teams, I see that in people, what you just described, and I feel that in people through our conversations. And when I'm working with them, I can see and feel their native genius, their gifts. And it's like, all right, it's like Michelangelo, right? When he went to carve the statue of David, he pulled away. The statue was already there. He just pulled away what was getting in the way. Or that beautiful story about the Golden Buddha in the Far East. I think it was either in Thailand or what's now Myanmar, where many years ago they covered this Golden Buddha in concrete to protect it. And then when they were moving it, it cracked, the concrete cracked, and they had no idea what was behind that, but it was a Golden Buddha. And that's what my sense is, what's behind the layers of protection, the layers of limitation, the layers of reactivity that are present there. How do we spend time really connecting with that Golden Buddha that lives inside each leader, each person, so that they can contribute and they can give their gifts?
It's the so that. And that's another missing piece that's so important. It's a deep connection to the why, right?
Big time. No, a big time. That's it. So when we know that why, everything is in service of that. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited about this process. About a dozen years ago, I connected with a brilliant scholar and trainer out in Boston, whose name is Nick Craig, who wrote a book called Leading from Purpose. And we got to know each other. I did some work with him there, and then we lost touch. And he wrote, a couple of months ago, he said, I'm so curious, for those of you who love purpose, how do you stay connected to your purpose? What helps you? So I said, hey, great to hear from you. Here's how I stay connected to my purpose. And I basically described everything we just talked about. The HeartMath, the positive intelligence, Dr. Joe's work, all the neuroscience work. And he goes, we got to talk. So we're in conversation now about marrying, helping people uncover that deep state of purpose there that makes you the only you there is, that makes you unique, and giving your gifts to really connect with that. And then if you understand the HeartMath and all this work on neuroscience there, how do you energetically stay connected to that? So it's not just an idea that you can think about, but it becomes your state of being.
Embodiment through and through.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's the big why. And this is, in a way, the how to get you there.
It's the rising tide. So let's all do this together, please. You and I also had the pleasure of going through Otto Scharmer's work, Theory U. We had our group of 30 people, and inside of that culture, trust is more easily built, sense of belonging is more easily built, like all of the things that really make a difference in people's lives, so they can use that creative power.
Yeah, and can you imagine a workplace where people have a tremendous sense of well-being, this tremendous sense of fulfillment? They feel connected to their deepest sense of purpose. They feel they can share their gifts. They stay connected to their heart, the creative part of their brain. They can manage the stress doing that. What that would do to the relationships they have with each other, with their customers, doing that, right? That it's all
Yeah.
about them anyway. And then also what that does then in terms of performance and the quality of what will happen by virtue of going beneath that top layer of the iceberg, which is
Yeah.
just results, to what really lies underneath and working that. And the challenge that we find a lot of times is people, they don't value the deeper work and see it as a distraction as opposed to a necessity to do that. Because as we all know, and I learned this very early on from a beloved teacher at MIT named Ed Shine, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you don't have the right culture and you keep putting pressure, it just leads to burnout. It leads to poor decision making, poor relationships, and ultimately it impacts the bottom line.
Yes. I know these are, then again, thanks to emotional intelligence. Oh, I can't remember which came first, mindfulness or emotional intelligence, but they just came up in people's awareness. And they were the soft skills that didn't necessarily have all the return on investment measurements that companies were looking for. But I think it's just going to continue to grow. And then as that company values that as much, that we'll see an exponential change. But I think this might be a fun segue into something that maybe has not proven an ROI yet, but it's around poetry and your new discovery. Do you want to share?
Sure, sure. One of the things I love, Allison, and that is I love meeting with, learning from, and connecting with very creative people like yourself. Do that. And someone that we knew through our Theory U work is a fellow named Jeremy Nash, who loves poetry. He runs something called the Poetry Tribe, which is a monthly gathering of people coming together to read and reflect on poetry because it opens the door for a different way of viewing life and that deeper meaning and purpose. And I became so curious with him. I could notice that when I was in that space, I felt differently. There's something opened up in my heart and brain that poetry accessed. And I mentioned that to him one day when we were talking. He said, there's this amazing book called Your Brain on Art. And that book actually describes, from a neuroscience perspective, what happens in your brain when you're exposed to any kind of art. In our case, especially poetry. So we are in the process of creating a course that says, hey, let's imagine that we all want to be the predominant creators of our life, that we all want to be map makers as opposed to just following the maps, right? That's what we want to do. How can poetry help us with that from a neurological perspective? So the idea is to marry the research on neuroscience and the arts with poetry so that people have an intellectual understanding of what's going on when you're reading poetry, then reading the poetry and then using that and developing practices between times that we're together to really strengthen that part of the brain that gets lit up when you're reading poetry, which, by the way, is very similar to the parts of the brain that get lit up when we're in our most creative states. So rather than being a passive recipient of poetry and engaging in it, we use poetry as a way of engaging and stimulating our own inherent creative processes so that more and more we live from that creative space in our lives.
Ron, as you describe the neuroconnectivity that's happening through the experience of being in this poetry, is it just by reading or is it by writing that really activates the?
It's about engaging with it. So, in other
Okay.
words, what does engaging mean? Engaging means a couple of things. One is taking a moment to sit with it and then being in conversation with others about the meaning it has for you. That's one way of engaging.
Okay.
Another way certainly is to write poetry there. Another way is to simply read something and then reflect on what really stood out for you, what really mattered to you, and either just be with that or just jot it down to do that. Or in our work with the Poetry Tribe, at the end, Jeremy asks us to write a particular form of poetry, which is 9 words, one on first line, two in the next line, three in the next line,
Oh, yeah.
two in the next line, that one. And it's amazing what comes out. So that's another way of doing that. But you're interacting with it. It's not a passive experience. There are just multiple different ways of engaging with that. And that starts really stimulating certain circuits in the brain.
It's the power of word, right? We're speaking into life.
Yes. Oh,
So
yes.
it's life expressing life, which then you're receiving it, which then you get to share it, and then from your heart into the space of the group, and then and so it's a way of nourishing the soul as well as the mind.
Yes. Now, I'll take this one step further.
Yes.
So I feel like this funnel leading us to this place of what does it mean to speak from presence? What does it mean to act from presence? What does it mean to engage with not what I can control and predict, but from what's emerging in this moment in the conversation there? And I've got all the ideas and tools and expertise and knowledge to draw from, but I'm not using my identity based on that. I'm rather using all the things we've talked about to bring me into a sense of presence and coming from that place. When we can do that, I believe that has amazing transformative impacts, not only on ourselves, but the people around us. I have to tell you what I love most about coaching. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just present, practice my heart coherence, become present. I have an intention of really serving my client. I have coaching tools. I have life experience, but they're only useful as they emerge in the conversation. And that's a great joy from that place, as opposed to coming from, I got to be the expert, here's how it is, or this is my knowledge, I got to tell you what it's like, and my identity depends on how smart I can show you I am, all that stuff.
Then again, the entry into this podcast introducing you, it's the care and it's the compassion and it's the consciousness. And those are critical for being present for what's wanting to emerge for them. And it's about
Yeah.
them.
And it's about them. I like to think of this, all of what we've talked about here is we have the capacity to upgrade the HOS, not our iOS like they do on the iPhone, our human operating system from 1.0, which is reactivity, staying stuck in the past, thinking that our future is going to be like our past, living in an incoherent state of reactivity, having our environment identify everything that we think we are, to really HOS 2.0 and beyond. And if we take the time and see that just like you would an exercise program, just to build those muscles, give yourself patience and permission. Some days will be better than others. We're all human. Believe me, I have my days that I'd rather not go to the gym, so to speak. But all of a sudden, when we start doing that, it then becomes not a vicious cycle, but a virtuous cycle. We start feeling better. We start feeling more joy in our life. We start feeling more connection. More good things happen to us. People are saying things. We're contributing better there. And so we want more of that. And so we continue to evolve there. And I guess that's the other thing I want to say too is I don't think as human beings we're ever finished products. I just hate it when people say, oh, I can't change. This is the way I am. To borrow from the Hertz commercial, not exactly. It may feel that way because of our habits and our tendencies, but it's not the truth there. And neuroscience and heart coherence is now showing us scientifically what we've always felt, many of us in our hearts and in our souls, that there's more. More is possible. More revelation of our true nature to ourselves and for others around us.
Oh, so good. I'm curious because you have been practicing for so long. Where do you suggest your clients or people that you meet to enter into a space that's just right for them? And when right, I mean aligned with their
Yeah,
season, with their circumstance.
I love that question. I really do. And I think we have all these wonderful teachers and tools and perspectives out there, and they're great. But the idea is start by trusting your heart. Start with that. And the way to begin to start trusting your heart, right? Your deepest sense of intuition, I found is the more I get into a state of being present, whether you do that through mindfulness or whether you do that through HeartMath or whether you do that through walking in nature. And I love walking. I walk 4 to 6 miles a day with my dog. And that's when the creative ideas come. That's where I start listening to that. And then say, hey, I want to grow and evolve. What's the right next thing for me to do that? It's going to be different for each one of us, right? My own personal practice is I start each morning before I get up out of bed. This is my way of integrating everything.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get out of bed, I do a Joe Dispenza meditation of connecting to who is it that I want to be today. When I've done it so long, I don't even need the meditation. I just connect to that. I just connect to that. What's the best version of myself I want to bring? And then I'm navigating my day. And so I finish a coaching call, and between coaching calls, I'll go stand out on my deck, and I'll just do 2 minutes of heart-focused breathing. Keep me centered there. And then I'll do more work, and then I'll take my dog for a walk. And so my day becomes really about managing my energy. I put as much attention on that as I do on the actual work that I'm doing. As you HeartMath work, it's like an iPhone, and we start the day plugged in with a lot of energy, and if we're not conscious, by the end of the day, the energy is just drained. Why wait for that? Just build the energy. So that's my practice, doing that. And I think the fun thing is for each of us to discover what's the right practice for us that allows us to stay connected to that deeper place within us there, and then stay in that energy throughout the day. And that becomes the real challenge and the real joy of being alive. My favorite word in the English language is joy. And the reason why it's joy is because just the joy of being alive is amazing. And all these other energies and reactions and environmental factors, whatnot, tamp that down. How do we reclaim the joy? And as the great Pastor Henry Nouwen once said, joy is not the same thing as happiness. Happiness is often about your external things happening, external things. Joy is something that happens from the inside.
Higher heart qualities. I'd love for you to share with people how they can find you, anything at all that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so LinkedIn under my name to do that. We're in the process of redoing our website, but my wife and our website is choicepointconsulting.com, because life is all about making conscious choices to do that there. And then, of course, you can email me at ron@choicepointconsulting.com. Always happy to respond and answer questions and just share anything that would be of value from what you learned today.
Have you had the experience of where you didn't know a person existed who is just doing great work in the world, and you discover them one day through a friend, through a podcast? I just find that this is our currency of how we can flow our work out into the world and just have these rich, meaningful conversations that hopefully are creating impact and curiosity and the next steps for someone.
I want to just say that the teachers can come from anywhere. And I just had this amazing story I just have to share as we close.
Yeah.
That I've been driving by the same corner in Boulder for years, and the same homeless people that stand there. And I'd stop occasionally, give money, and then go on. Sometimes I wouldn't. And I was encouraged to actually pull my car over and tell them I'm going to give them more than they usually get, and if they would answer some questions. I did this with one fellow who we spoke for 20 to 30 minutes. and he's Native American, and we spoke. And what I learned through the challenges and the hardships that he has, and how he maintains his equilibrium in the midst of that, was just as important to me as any well-known teacher that I've studied with. And it's a reminder that the gifts are all around us.
That's closing wisdom. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Alison. This was great fun.
Are you enjoying Discover Wellbeing? If so, I would love to hear about it. Leaving a review helps more people find us and really makes a difference. So share your thoughts on Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform. Your feedback supports our show and helps spread the message of well-being.